Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Like I always say, welcome to Atlanta Discuss. My name remains Ade Balogo. I'm your host, I'm your anchor. Some call me moderator. It doesn't matter. What matters is that we're always here to discuss. Is Atlanta Discuss. Today we have another topic, a topic that's relevant to what's happening in Africa's largest country. When I say large, I'm talking in terms of population. One out of every four sub-Saharan African is a Nigerian. One out of every six Black people in the entire world is a Nigerian. The largest concentration of Black people anywhere on the planet is Nigeria. So it's logical that anything that affects Nigeria affects the Black race and clearly affect the world. The biggest hope, the major hope of the Black race is Nigeria. Clearly, the country is acting behind schedule. It is way, way, way behind schedule. A country that was a beacon of hope for the Black man right now is nothing to write home about. Some are saying it's a failed state. Some are saying it's on the verge of being a failed state. Some have said it's ticked all the buttons. Some have said it just has one or two more buttons. Nothing positive is coming out. To imagine the Naira has less value than the Zimbabwean dollar. To imagine that the Naira has less value than the French CFA, the economic community of West African money of the French Francophone bloc, is most unbelievable. This is 2023. Nigeria is the only producing nation in the world that doesn't have a functional refinery. It is not a good time for Nigeria. The elections are still being litigated. There are scandals everywhere, which brings us to the topic of the day. Nigerian politicians and the pestilence of forged and missing certificates. There's no other time to discuss it. There's no other person to discuss it with. Just one person I know. Just one person that will come and go for the jugular. This is Adejuwon Anjorin. We call him J1. Adejuwon, welcome once again to Atlanta Discuss.
Thank you very much again, Mr. Diolu. It's always a pleasure to be here with you.
Okay, you all know J1. We call him, that's his nickname, but it's not a stranger. He's a professional, he's an IT and a project manager in the US government. So he has a varied responsibility and he covers a lot of stuff. So he's politically savvy, he's aware, and right now we think he's a man for the job. We just want to look at the truth. Nobody is happy with the way things are going on in Nigeria. So based on the topic J1, Nigerian politician and the pestilence of forged and missing certificate, what do you have to say about it? It's getting too much because so far we've seen people in the House of Rep have been thrown out for presenting forged certificate. We have governors having same problem. We have issues with the president and all that. I mean, we're going to go into details, but before we go, there's something I'm going to read out, but I just want you to make a remark on what you think, your general overview on why that is happening, and what do you think it's causing for the country?
Well, thank you again, Atlanta Discourse, for having me, for being a great big brother too, Mr. Diolu. So today, incidentally, is Nigeria's Independence Day in Nigeria. It's already October 1st. It's September 30th here in Atlanta, but so happy Independence Day to Nigeria. Nigeria is 63 years old as an independent country. So there's no better time than now to discuss this topic. I think it's a timely topic to discuss because right now we have a situation where the former vice president of Nigeria is in court in the US accusing a sitting president of Nigeria of certificate forgery. So I think it's a very, very unfortunate incident, but it's not shocking. This is something that's been coming for a long time. I spent some time to dig into Nigeria's history with certificate forgery at the highest levels of authority. And I was shocked at what I found. And I'm hoping that through this discussion, we'll be able to x-ray so that we can see exactly who we are as a people and how deep this goes and what we need to do as a people to get out of this kind of rut. But right now, I would say that this doesn't look good for Nigeria at all. I don't think it looks good for our image. It doesn't look good for foreign investment. It doesn't look good for even Nigerians in the diaspora who would be occupying very sensitive offices wherever they are, that this kind of thing is going on in our country. So I do think that, yes, Nigerians, we're facing a moment of reckoning where all of us must sit down and reflect soberly on what our true national character is.
Okay, before we go into the nitty-gritty of what has been happening, I'm happy you made reference to you investigated. Coincidentally, I've done the same thing too, because it looks like it's not a new thing. There's a story I stumbled on as far back as the time of Azikiwe and all that, you know. But the question I want to ask you is this, and that bothers me, like, does it mean we're just inherently a dishonest people? Because Nigeria carries a toga of fraud, 419, all sorts of things. Does that really speak of who we are? Because as of this moment, the current chief of staff of the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has been disbarred from the Georgia bar. You know, you live in Atlanta because of some money collected in the past and all that. And that gentleman, Femi Gbajabiamila, coincidentally was the last immediate speaker. That makes him the number 4 citizen in the last dispensation. And he's still holding the position of a chief of staff to the president, nothing is happening, which clearly means that we don't find anything wrong with it. You know, that's why, does it mean that we're inherently dishonest?
So
And that's just how the current government. So we go on and on. What's happening? Is that who we are?
Yes, let's start from the story you talked about. Because to define who we are, I think it's good for us to set the background for the viewers so that we don't sound like pessimists of the Nigerian experiment. Okay, from my research, going back into the 1940s, there was a gentleman identified as Prince Modukwe. I don't know if you're right into his story. He had multiple names. One of them was Prince Modukwe. One of them was Modukwe Paris, and he was also known as David Modukwe. He had claimed that he graduated from Oxford University in the UK, but Oxford University denied him. And he was not a Nigerian political leader, but he was an influential diasporan at the time. He called himself the Crown Prince of Nigeria. It is said that he spent a lot of years living in the United States and in the UK. That's the earliest that I found. And this man went around parading this certificate I didn't have. Following after that, in the 1950s, I found the story of Dr. Okechukwu Ikejiani. I don't know if you ran into the story of Dr. Okechukwu Ikejiani.
Yes, I did.
Exactly.
This man, I was going to go.
Yes. And when we get down to the issue of our current president, you will see that the precedent didn't start today for what we're having now. So he said he graduated with a Doctor of Science degree, which is like a doctorate in medicine. Boy, that's not what he had. He was just a medical doctor. He had an MD from a school somewhere in the West. I believe it was Canada or the US. But he came to Nigeria and said he had a Doctor of Science degree. So the Zik of Africa, the famous Zik of Africa, that is Nnamdi Azikiwe, appointed him. This man was pro-chancellor of the Ibadan University College, which I believe was the predecessor of what UI is today. He was appointed as the chairman of Nigerian Railways Commission. And it was when he was appointed as the chairman of Nigerian Railways Commission that the issue of his certificate really came to the fore. And people protested that he had forged his certificate and what he claimed to be was not who he was academically. So they pulled him out of that position. However, Mr. Adeolu, even after that, he became the personal doctor to the president and he was awarded the CON, Commander of the Order of the Niger, even after it had been found out that this man had been parading a certificate that he did not have. At about the same time, I found out a shocking news about Dr. Nwafo Orizu. I don't know if you saw it.
I know Nwafo. I know him very well, very well.
Yeah, so
Nwafo.
I found news that Dr. Nwafo Orizu was actually in jail for 7 years for fraud, that he had set up some kind of organization that claimed to help people to travel out for school, to go to the US for school. But so he collected £32,000 from parents, but he didn't help their kids to go to school. So he was found guilty. But this man became Nigeria's first Senate president, and he was actually acting president in 1966. When
the coup happened, he was acting president.
Correct. And it is said that the authorities at the time, it didn't matter to them that he had this kind of past, and he was still nominated to be the federal representative for Newi and places like that. All of this was in the 1950s. Then coming down to the Fourth Republic, where we've had a slew of political leaders who have been accused, in fact, a number of them guilty and been found guilty, starting with Salisu Buhari in 1999, who made his way to become the Speaker of the House, which is like the position that McCarthy is in the Congress. That's number 4 position. I mean, this guy was a through and through criminal. His age was forged. His degree from, he claimed, University of Toronto was false. His NYC certificate was forged. And he was sentenced to 2 years imprisonment with an option of fine, and he was pardoned by President Obasanjo at the time. We've had issues upon issues upon issues. And I think it's important that we go through this history from the 1950s. This is 2023. This is even before we became an independent country. We'll be having the issues of forgery and falsified certificates among our political leaders. What does that say about our national character? Does that mean that we are just an inherently dishonest people? I will not say that, because that would be a disservice to the many, many, many generations of Nigerians who stood above board in their time, who did not compromise.
Let me just interject you. Let me interject for a minute. What you just said now, I'm going to take you up on it in the subsequent question, because you're saying that if we're not entirely inherently dishonest, you understand. What I'm going to ask you is that the mere fact that we're not, or you say it's a disservice to the entirety, I'm going to even ask you now. What I'm saying is that, what about those that are keeping quiet, that know the truth now, not saying anything?
That is where I'm going. That's exactly where I'm going. Like, I wouldn't say we are.
Okay. I'm sorry. Okay, let me allow.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say we are through and through dishonest people. But what has been manifest is that the dishonest people among us are usually the bolder people. The dishonest are usually more visible. And then it seems like those who have real integrity, they're kind of behind, shy, and we just hide. They kind of hide behind. It's as if the honest are also cowardly in our culture. So therefore, it's coming across as if the dishonest have a louder voice. And then when they are found out, it then seems like, oh, why do those people have such a streak of dishonest people in their leadership? I believe it's because, like the popular saying goes, that when good people in a society keep quiet, when good people don't offer themselves for service, then expect your country to be ruled by fools. So this is what the true image of Nigeria is. And unfortunately, I'll have to draw on a religious background, like the story of Barnabas and Jesus, when Pontius Pilate, in the story in the Bible where it says, who do you want us to release to you? Jesus Christ or Barnabas? And they chose Barnabas because they hated Jesus Christ because he was a truth sayer. So our society is very, very similar to that. A lot of our people are guilty of sycophancy, cowardice, bootlicking, and just hero worship of anybody who has money. I think that is where our society has fallen the most in its morality. So therefore, when these people show up, they get applause. As you can see, this man in the 1950s, I was shocked when I saw the story that Zeke still put him forward for leadership, even though he had such a checkered past in his certificate history. And so this trait has dogged our country up till what we have right now, where literally the Nigerian brand is at the precipice of shame right now. The Nigerian brand is at the precipice of a holistic national disgrace. I hope that the truth prevails, and I hope that when the truth prevails, the Nigerians will rise up to the occasion and demand true justice for the sake of ourselves, for the sake of the children that we hope to hand over the name Nigeria to.
Interesting. So, I mean, I like the way you put it. So it's clear that we've had people of Igbo descent that have been involved. You called that that's for Ikejani and Nwafo Orizo, for example. You mentioned Salisu Buhari. We have somebody from the north also involved, a lot of which there's a guy, Abdul Malik Ado Ibrahim. He said he lost his school sat. He was the presidential candidate of the YPP party. Even the former vice president, Atiku, he said he changed his name from Sadiq Abubakar to Abubakar Atiku. There were some issues around that, but well, he saw to an affidavit. So there's really, I mean, that one, it's neither here nor there. There's one guy too, Sonny Yabadi. He changed his name, and we can go on and on. Now, my point is this. If after all said and done, these issues cut across ethnic groups, tribes, and it goes back to what I've asked you. Does it not tell a lot about who we are? Because look at it, for example, we have 4 refineries, nothing is working. In the last 8 years, we've expended almost $1 billion every year on refinery turnaround maintenance, nothing is working. A private refinery was commissioned recently and is still not functional. You understand? Now, which makes us look like generally Nigerians are 419, Nigerians are this and that. So it still goes back to the question I asked. Does it not say anything about our intricate personality, our orientation? Because if you look at it, I know you don't like talking about religious leaders, but there's no religious leader, so to say, whether Islamic or Christianity, that is condemning in all entirety what is happening today. Because if you look at it clearly, you discover that a lot of these people are even supported by the moralists. So the question is, do we still have role models in Nigeria?
We do. We do. We must respect the sacrifices of people like late Gadi Fawemi, who was a completely detribalized Nigerian who pursued some of these things. Yes, we have to respect the sacrifices of people like that. We have to respect the character of men like Professor Patutomi. Ever since I've known Professor Patutomi, he's been talking about this issue, the issue of integrity and culture in our society. We must pay respect to Pastor Tunde Bakare. Pastor Tunde Bakare has done his part. When you talk about the clergy and speaking up against bad governance and bad character and bad character in our leadership, that man has spent years. As a matter of fact, the reason why he threw his heart in, even though, the people rejected him, just like I said in the biblical reference, the reason why he threw his heart in was, you know what, we need to get into this game because it just seems like everybody who is in it doesn't represent the best parts of our character. Let's not forget people like Fela Anikulapo Kuti, who opposed and called out corruption and paid very, very dire sacrifices for that. So Nigeria boasts of men and women who are of exemplary character. And there are many others that we don't know, who are not famous. Let's not forget the lady that died that was head of NAFDAC, Dora Akunyili, who was harassed, survived several assassination attempts because she stood against a cartel in the healthcare that was poisoning Nigerians with fake drugs. And then it goes on and on and on. But the problem, like I said, is, which is something that I found different in the society where we live here, which is one of the differences. Those who mean well and who have the character, the proper character to lead and to be the face of the country, in our society back home, they are mostly cowardly. I don't know why. But the bold, most of those who are out there, who put themselves at risk out there in our society, they are unscrupulous elements, but they have courage. And this is the challenge that people like you and I need to research, to say, why is it that people like you and I and the many, many others among us who would never cheat anyone or find anybody's trouble or, do wrong and things like that, why are we so fearful? Why are we behind? And why is it do we give the leadership to men and women who've gone all over the world committing all sorts of crimes and the entire world knows? So here in the US, a lot of these things will not fly because regular citizens, and this is the important thing, regular citizens of good conscience, they will rise up and they will begin to demand justice. The reason why the former president did not succeed when he was trying to change votes and things like that, although the cases are in court, it was members of his party that stood against it. In the state of Georgia, it was a member of the party that said, no, Mr. President, I can't change those numbers just because you asked. In Arizona, it was a member of his party that did the same. They did that on the strength of their integrity and their honor to say, no, as an American, I'm not going to change these numbers because that's not what I stand for. In our society, we have people who are not doing wrong, but they capitulate. They capitulate to the force of those who want to do wrong. Before any governor can steal money, before any president can take money, there's a whole bureaucratic structure of people, of auditors, of accountants who will see why is it that nobody is able to rise up and say, I'm not going to participate in this? No, even if the heavens fall. So I think cowardice on the part of good Nigerians is one of the major reasons why we have this problem, why we have a vice president who had to swear an affidavit that you can't find his certificate, a president being accused of multiple forgeries. Some of them are so appalling that left to me, they don't even go to court for it. It's so clear. And it goes all the way back decades like that. Why is it that our monarchs are willing to give chieftaincy titles to men of questionable character whose source of wealth are not so great? Why is it that in the house of God, men of God see obvious questionable characters and they still accept all of these gifts from them? These are the questions that we need to ask. The question that borders on cowardice, a refusal to stand up for what we believe in, and the best among us who shy away from participating, but we still don't stand up to challenge that culture. So then that culture begins to speak for us loudly as if that's who we are. But whatever, David Uday is a Nigerian kid. I keep referring to that guy because he's kind of the face of it in this generation of what Gani was in his day, what Femi Falana was in his day, and a lot of these guys that I mentioned. This is a generation where a lot of young men are taking to internet crime. No, the guy is out there putting himself at risk and calling out corruption. So is he not a Nigerian? He is a Nigerian. The only difference is that he puts himself out there. He's willing to take that risk. As Africans, as Nigerians, majority of us, we shy away from doing that. Mr. Adeolu, I put it to you that we have a problem of cowardice, not really a problem. Because if you look at here, everywhere in the world, there are people who are not honest. There's a guy in the US Congress right now, I think his last name is Santos. His academic credentials are kind of like that. Some kind of lies in who he says he is. So he's there. But do you know what? Republicans are calling him out. The former Republican candidate, I'm forgetting the man that contested against Obama from Utah, Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney called him out at the last State of the Union address and told him, you ought not to be here shaking hands with our president. You should be ashamed of yourself. That's integrity. That's standing up for something. There was I don't know if it's Bloomberg, there's a Democrats senator who wrote somewhere that he was in the military, but he was never in the military. Even though he didn't resign, he has not resigned, but he was made to apologize. He apologized publicly for those lies because the society is standing back in the face across the political spectrum. We will not stand behind this. So I think that is what is missing in our culture. It's a culture that says, look, don't stand up for right, or they will kill you. Don't speak up, they will eliminate you. Just keep quiet, let them do what they do. You do what you do, study your books, and be prosperous. And if you can jack out of the country, jack out of the country. That is what I believe has led us to where we are today. If we have more people speaking up and challenging the status quo and shining more light on it, we can begin to turn the tide away from what it is right now.
I agree with you absolutely. I agree 100%. I mean, there's no point knowing the truth and not talking out. Do you understand? I mean, you refer to Dora Akilwe, she's late. Fela Nicola Kokuti is late. Gani Faweimi is late. But God has given us David Uday, a 33-year-old young man that's lived up to the billing. I mean, and talking about David, David did an expose about a year ago on the person of the current president of Nigeria. I think it's a good time to talk about it. And according to him, he got in touch with a lawyer, a Nigerian lawyer called something Eba, and they got in touch to the law firm in the United States, and they did some digging, subpoenaed some records from Deloitte, where the former president was said to have worked, the courts in Illinois, where the judgment of the forfeiture case was given. They also got some documents from Southwestern College and Chicago State University, and these are subpoena documents they got from all those institutions. The one from Deloitte said the former president was never a staff of that firm, and there's no record of him ever working there. The one from Chicago State University, which that Bola Tinubu was even said to have gone to Southwestern College, the under gender we saw female, and there are a lot of discrepancies. And also we know that there was a court case of forfeiture of about $460,000 US, and it was clearly written there that the forfeiture was based on heroin trafficking. So, I mean, that is there. That was pre-election. And if those things, at that time, a lot of people didn't take it serious, but it was there in public. An effort was made by the Nigerian lawyer Eba to go to court. And according to him and David, that the case was not allocated to any judge. They were all dodging it. Nothing was done about it, which itself is very unusual, considering the enormity of the allegations and what have you. And considering also it was an election period for Nigeria. Now we've had the election, the winner has been declared, the first phase of the petition. We've heard some judgment has been given, but the Supreme Court is the final arbiter. So now talking about David's investigation, I know it's not public domain that the former vice president of Nigeria, who was also one of the former presidential candidates, has now gone to court in America to compel Chicago State University to release all the transcripts of the former president, everything that involves him and that. And the former president in turn has gone to court to stop the court from revealing his certificate. I find that very, very shameful. I think it's unusual that because the former president has said in so many public fora that he's a first-class accounting student and all that. So now the question is, how do you see the entire Bola Tinubu scenario from the David Onde's point of view to what is happening today? How do you see it?
All these things that you reeled out, they've been in the public domain since before the elections. Matter of fact, they've been in public domain for years. And I believe that in a society that speaks the truth, that stands for the truth, because it is righteousness that exalts the nation, and sin is a reproach to any country. In any society, any normal society, the issue of forfeiting funds for heroin trafficking, I thought that was enough to disqualify President Bola Tinubu from even running at all. I thought that was enough. But apparently it was not enough for a lot of Nigerians who did not care about that issue. That's a kind of past that, even as bad as we can see our society is, that's something that should not have passed. And I remember telling you how I clashed with a lot of childhood friends, even family members over that issue. So I challenged them. You couldn't watch me or even smoke a cigarette or even walk across the street with a kid that did wrong. How are you okay with this? I think it speaks to just how falling our society is. I think poverty and greed has contributed to making this happen. Don't forget that in Nigeria today, it is said that a lot of internet fraudsters, they buy cars and take it home, and their parents accept cars from kids who have no known business. So the society is at a place where apparently this kind of thing can fly and doesn't go challenged. So that's a problem. Then you have the issue of Deloitte, where Deloitte, I saw the letter. It's out there in the public and it's never been addressed. I feel like somebody should sit down and say, Mr. Bola Tinubu or president or senator, whichever one you want to call the president, this is what you said at some point in time. What Deloitte has written that they don't know you. Can you explain this? So the issue of integrity, it seems like Nigeria doesn't take it seriously. And I want to address that issue because it's very important. A lot of people believe that as long as there's competence, character should not matter. This is a serious problem. As long as the person is smart, if he has the right economic policies, if he can assemble the right team, why should it matter that 30 or 40 years ago, he forged some kind of certificate that lets him graduate from a university or something? We can see that the man is smart. We can see that he can build. He's built here, he's built there, and things like that. And this is what I have to say to that. Yes, a person can be very, very competent and be able to put together a very fantastic team that can work. A person can be a CEO and turn the company's fortunes around, be a governor, a president, turn the fortunes of that nation around. But if the character is questionable, then it puts in bad light all of the competence that you just talked about. Because at the end of the day, the process through which anything emerges is at least as important as that end goal. A good process is important to make a good leader. A good process is important to make a good leader. You do not want to encourage people in the society to begin to think that, don't worry, just do whatever you have to do to get there. But when you get there, if you do right by the people, people will forget who you are. If we keep doing that, we will have created a highway for the worst among us to become leaders in our society. And our society will not get better, like it's not getting better. The problem with Nigeria, economically, infrastructure, everything we talk about, is not a question of whether we have smart people or not. Nigerians are very, very smart. I think that is very, very self-evident. Everywhere we are, it's talked about. We are very, very smart. The problem is not the lack of smartness. The problem is a lack of integrity, dishonesty, corruption. That is the real problem that we have in Nigeria. So for those people, for intellectuals, because when you look at some people, Mr. Dioda, you say, how can this person support this? Sometimes you have to check a person's ideology, how they see things. They just want to see problems solved. And even if you're going to bring a thief to solve it, as long as that thief knows mathematics, so it's like, as long as they know what it takes to do this job, let them do it. We should never encourage that kind of belief system in Nigeria for our leadership. That is very, very wrong. We have to go back and say, no. Your character matters. Have you built a past that's based on truth, that's based on integrity? Are you who you say you are? Did you attend the schools that you claim you attended? Have you ever forged? Anybody who has ever forged certificates? No. You should not be in leadership. You are a bad example to the youth. Even if that is all it is. Even that is all it is. Even if you're able to bring Nigeria's economy from the doldrums to prosperity, if that kind of thing can be traceable to you and you've compromised that integrity, we must push for a society that has zero tolerance for unscrupulous elements, no matter how smart they are. So I think that is where a lot of our people, in my opinion, have lost it, sacrificing character for competence. Coming to the issue of Chicago State University, I'm glad that by Monday, I think by Monday or Tuesday or so, this issue will be put to rest. The judge has ruled that the president's credentials be put out so we can know exactly what is going on. This whole thing is so mysterious. We have had two Nigerians who graduated from the University of Chicago, come out to swear affidavits that they were classmates of the president. In fact, one of them said that he contested for a departmental position at the university against the president, that he knew him in school, that they were together in school, and saw an affidavit to that effect. That, for me, is the guy lying? Is he making it up? Would somebody put themselves at that kind of risk? Is the part that I'm questioning. So what do we have here? Do we have a case of a former president who attended a school but under somebody else's name? Or do we have a case? There's a recent article that breaks down the certificate, the CSU certificate that the president presented to INEC, and says that everybody who signed that certificate was not in the university as at 1977 or 1979 when the president graduated. So how did we come by this certificate? The demand, if people who went to the school, if Nigerians who went to the school at the time are saying they knew him at the school. So is it that the man lost his certificate and he forged it? If that is the case, I think he doesn't deserve to be our president. He doesn't deserve to be. If he forged anything along the journey, no, he does not deserve to be our president. I think that Nigerians must demand, if that is the case, that we are better than that. I think young people must demand that we are better than that, because what's the point then of going through the rigors of going through university if you can forge a certificate and stay as president after it's been found out that you actually forged? We will be pushing our society over the brink in terms of moral rectitude, over the brink, if as a society will support that kind of behavior. So I'm hoping that by Monday, by next week, as Nigeria celebrates its independence, and this case brings to light things that we don't know right now, that we'll be able to see the light. And I'm hoping that Nigeria will rise up to the occasion and rescue our image from disgrace.
Yes, I like that. I mean, we're all very optimistic. I mean, the US system clearly shows that we have an inept judicial system because the speed at which they are adjudicating is very, very, very impressive. So whatever happens, we'll know. The former judge has said they should release it. The case was appealed, and now judgment will be given. We are reliably informed that the judge that's going to rule on Monday has even asked for the judgment of the appeal court and so many other things. So it just beat my imagination why any public officer will want, things about him or her eating. Well, having said that, if on Monday or Tuesday, as the case may be, we find out for one reason that everything that has been in public domain, vis-a-vis falsification, female Bola Tinubu, and all those issues, I mean, are on our judicial system to do anything against the president. We have seen enough of that. If on Monday or Tuesday, the American court rules that Chicago University should be allowed to release all the documents asked by article, and when they are released, everything Udenya has brought forward in the past is corroborated. What do you think should be the next step for Nigeria?
Nigerians must demand that the president resign. As simple as
But
that.
people don't resign in Nigeria. People don't resign in Nigeria.
Across, well, we have not had this situation before either. We have not had this situation before either, where an American judge will give that kind of ruling and it will become manifest. Let's look at what it will portend for Nigeria and Nigerians if that is the case. What you would have, assuming that David Hundeyin is corroborated, what you will have is a president who has no mouth to speak among presidents of other countries. Just look at what is happening to Nigeria's image. A few days ago, the president was returning back from Europe. The Niger Republic refused his aircraft from flying through. This news came out, and he had to go land in Algeria and then take an alternative route to come to Nigeria. That's the Niger Republic, our neighbor, a country that's like Nigeria's younger brother. We've had diplomatic relations for decades. For them to do that to a sitting Nigerian president, it's telling you that Nigeria's dignity, Nigeria's respect is being eroded very, very quickly. Imagine what would happen if David is corroborated and the president refuses to resign. Imagine the erosion of moral justification. I'm looking for the right expression for it. Just the erosion of the moral standing that the president has to do anything, or that Nigeria has to do anything, or that Nigerians have. I think we're not looking at it from a perspective of personal loss. If you're a Nigerian and you're an accountant in the US, in the UK, wherever you are, and this news comes out that this is what is happening in your home country, and you are holding a key position of trust, listen, that can be a problem. That will give a lot of people the opportunity to cast aspersions on innocent Nigerians all over the world. No, we cannot stand for that. If David is corroborated, it will be the moment of reckoning for Nigeria. I keep saying it. We will need to lead a campaign asking that the president resigns from office. Civil societies and the clergy. The clergy, both Islamic, Christian, and even African tradition, we need to say, okay, no, that's enough. We will not stand for this. What are we going to tell our children? What are we going to tell our children? Mr. Adiolu, what are we going to tell our children? That's been confirmed legally that the president forged documents, but it's okay for him to be our leader. Absolutely not. I think that moment will come. It will be a constitutional crisis that Nigeria has not seen before, but it will be a fight that we have to fight, that David started, and the onus will be on the rest of us to push further, to say, no, this is not who we are. I'm a Nigerian, and this is not who we are. resign and leave this position. Matter of fact, not just resign, be prosecuted. If Salisu Buhari resigned and was prosecuted for forgery, University of Toronto, if Evans Emerem had to go, because of this issue. There was a lady who had to go because of NYC certificate that was forged. On what moral grounds are we then going to say a president must sit in power who has been confirmed to be a forger? No, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. I hope that we'll have this conversation in the next 1 or 2 weeks where things may have changed dramatically. And that will be the time to then take such a strong position. But no, nobody who has been confirmed legally anywhere in the world to have committed crimes should sit as a Nigerian president, regardless of how smart they are or how powerful their team is.
Yeah, I mean, clearly I've spoken from a moral point of view, a moralistic point of view. My argument remains that people hardly resign. I know Salisu Buhari did it back then, but I mean, from what I've seen, even the Nigerian courts are not, they are not particularly independent. They are not acting above board. We are not the law of judgment. You don't have to be a lawyer to know that judgment have been given in this correct election cycle that are not even constitutional. So if he doesn't resign, what do we do? If the Supreme Court now validates the election despite all because whatever is at stake right now vis-a-vis Atiku and the court, whatever David had gotten in the past, they are not forged documents. They were subpoenaed documents. So what for the American court is a matter of release or don't release, because the documents David has given us are actually facts. Nobody has disputed them actually. You understand? And the one that was submitted to INEC by the president, the one that was submitted by the president to INEC is a forged document, and even the Chicago State University said they cannot vouch for the authenticity of that particular document. So the judgment from America will either be release everything Atiku asked for or don't violate the privacy of President Bola Tinubu. It's either of that. You understand? So what has been in public domain has been corroborated to be true. Nobody has actually said they are lies. Nobody has said he did not forfeit money. Nobody has said that the Bola Tinubu that went to Chicago State is not an American citizen. You understand? Nobody has said that the document from Deloitte is a lie. I mean, you know very well that in 1999, when he became governor, while Gani took him to court there, you know the story. You know, it was supposed to be Chicago State and University of Chicago. And there, secondary school was Government College Ibadan, and primary school was one St. Paul's primary school, lawyer. Now, after all said and done, we know he didn't go to that primary school. We know he didn't attend that secondary school. We know he didn't go to University of Chicago. So it's the Chicago State now that is a bone of contention. I have read in some places where I even said he went to Government College Eric Moore, and based on my reading that document, I know that even that Government College Eric Moore was not established at the year he was said to have attended. So it does look like you said, let me use the way to that, too much scandal, too much forgery, too much from one person. That is too much. What I have also read and people say is that, maybe Bola Tinubu is not a real name, which I also think is not a big deal. You understand? In America, they'll ask you, fill any they'll ask you, what's your former name? I say, okay, formerly known as this. Do you have any aliases or that? I want to believe that he must have attended, they must have some semblance of education. It might not be maybe under some other name or that. So it's no big deal for him to come out and say, nobody's going to hold him to that. But even with the way things are at right now, there have been too many denials. So it's actually in the president's interest, in Nigerians' interest for us to know the truth so that we can move on. The judiciary right now is on trial. Unfortunately, they've not started very well. So I know that the American court also, they're trying to speed up the judgment so that the Supreme Court will be able to apply whatever comes out of that as part of their judgment, So we're all praying for Nigeria, and we hope that at the end of the day, Nigeria is better off for it. But the key thing there is this: how do we arrive at this? From 1940, 1950, we mentioned Ikejiani, we mentioned Nwafo Orizu, former Senate President, Salisu Buhari, and today, Nigeria, I was still watching a documentary today about one who the guy, defrauded a Brazilian bank, 242 million. I was told that's the biggest 419, scam in the history of mankind. The guy was sentenced to prison, release, and all that. He's a free man now, and all that. Now, That's why I asked that very first question. It says a lot about who we are, because at the end of the day, the police is cash and carry. It's not because I'm saying it, it's a fact. A
It's a
lot of
fact.
things are cash and carry. It's a fact, yeah.
Mhm.
The judiciary, same thing. So how do we get out of all this? Because even if the president is confirmed to be guilty of all these things, even if he resigns, I don't think he will, but even if he does, where does that take us? How do we remove that stigma of corruption from us? That's what I want to ask you. How do we get out of all that stigma? Somebody said something that I find very amazing. He said, if we want to recalibrate and reset, we should forget about everybody 6 year old and above and concentrate more people that are 5 year old and that kind of thing. Well, as funny as it sounds, as difficult as it might look, it's not a bad idea. But how do we reset? How do we remove that corruption toga from our politics?
That's a very, very, very hard question to answer. But I was thinking, as you were asking the question, I was thinking about the different societies across the world who have had what we can call a national rebirth at different times. We know about Ghana, for instance, although that was not a bloodless way. It was a very brutal way. But there was Ghana before Jerry Rawlings and Ghana after Jerry Rawlings. We know about Rwanda. Rwanda, there was what Rwanda was before the genocide, and that's what Rwanda is after the genocide. And if you will, you can come to the West as well. There was 400 years of human chattel slavery, and there's life after that, even though that's not so crystal clear. So societies have been known to go through what I can call national rebirth. Continents have been known to go through what they call renaissance, in which a whole new wave of thinking pervades a society and it gives birth to a new set of values and ideals. So, because it has happened in other places, I am optimistic that it can and it will happen in Nigeria. That national reset, that national rebirth, I do not know exactly what will cause that to happen. Look at what's happened in Francophone Africa, for instance. The whole wave of coups that's going on is a resetting that's going on. West African countries are saying, that is Francophone ones, say, France, we need you to really, really go. We are really, really done with you this time. They are also pressing that button. There was a coup a couple of days ago. It didn't succeed in Burkina Faso because a lot of Burkinabes, that's what they're called, are really, really tired of France. Compare that with 30-something years ago, during Sankara's time, that coup succeeded and Burkina Faso's revolution was quenched at that time. So it is going to come, Mr. Diolu. It is going to come. Nigerian diaspora, the growing size of the Nigerian diaspora is going to have a role to play in it. And there's a point where we will fall to, and this may just be that point, honestly, if this thing goes the way we're talking about, where we say, okay, hold on, everybody, this is not how we want to proceed. So that is what I will say to that. Now, in terms of the president, during Gani's time, he was governor of Lagos State. The stakes were lower than now. That's number one. As governor of Lagos State, as president of Nigeria, which is the biggest black country in the world, it's not the same. So yes, all of that went down. Everybody saw what was going on, and it kind of just went through that way. The stakes are different now. That's number one. Number two, when David came up with, David is the enfant terrible of Nigerian journalism. Everybody knows that. So I understand that it could be ignored. Unfortunately for the system, now the system is at war with itself now. It's not just a young journalist trying to cause trouble. It's the vice president who has an end goal, who's trying to upstage the president in order for him to try to claim his mandate, who is exposing this. So when like I said again, the stakes couldn't be higher for Nigeria. If this case goes the way the vice president is pursuing it and is able to expose these things, Nigeria is going to face a real moral and constitutional crisis where ultimately we should not, I do not think, I would never write out Nigerians in this equation. When EndSARS burst out, nobody thought it would. When the obedient movement burst out, nobody thought it would. When the movement around Mohbad's death burst out, it came unexpected. Within a few days, all over Nigeria, people are talking about it, people are marching about it, and things like that. So if it gets to that point where the fraud is essentially confirmed, even though it is confirmed, but essentially confirmed at the highest levels, then I truly, truly believe that at that time, even if it is out of shame, a lot of stakeholders are going to rise up and say, okay, let's get, the elite, they're going to rise up and say, okay, let's go. And I believe that even the average Nigerian, I don't want to call anybody common man, the average Nigerian is going to rise up and say, no, we are a better people than this. We want to bequeath a better society to our children than what we have right now. And I believe that justice will be done. That is, if indeed all the forgeries that have been highlighted are confirmed with this case that's going on because of how high the stakes are.
Yeah, but I'm going to ask you one more question. But before I ask that, I just want us to talk about that case again. Now, if the American court, for example, says, okay, let's respect the president's privacy, does that solve the president's problem of illegitimacy, the baggage he's carrying, and forged documents?
No, it doesn't. In my opinion, I think it makes it worse. I think that he may be the president for 4 years, even 8 years, but there will always be that question mark on his presidency, which for me is perhaps the most important of all of this. You see, every day today, gather 5 or 6 knowledgeable Africans together and ask them to mention the names of African leaders of repute. They're going to mention Julius Nyerere. You understand? They're going to mention names like that. They're going to mention names like Kwame Nkrumah,
Mandela.
Nelson Mandela.
Yes.
So legacy, you understand? Legacy. The president's legacy will always have that question mark. It will always have that question mark, unfortunately. And Nigeria also will be affected. Nigeria's brand and image will also be affected, and it will take some time for that to be cleaned up. So I hope that, because academic records are not supposed to be, they're not medical records, they can't be put out in the open, especially, and I read what the judge said, that the interest of the people in this case is extremely high, because a lot of people want to know who their president is. Is he who he says he is? So I don't see that happening, but if it does happen, I think it's most unfortunate for the president himself and for the country, because it doesn't put us on the pathway that we need to go. That's
yeah, I know you're Yoruba. You have the Yoruba stock from ethnic stock in Nigeria, and I know in Yoruba there's what you call moluabi, a well-behaved, well-mannered, good conduct that comes with a lot of integrity. Now, this is not a good one for the Yorubas, considering the fact that Yorubas are academically oriented, they take academics and integrity very serious. If at the end of the day that it's seen that the current president of Nigeria has been associated with forgery and all the encumbrances, how bad will it be for the Yorubas?
Honestly, that's a very sensitive question.
Hmm.
I don't think it looks good at all. The first political leader of repute of Yoruba extraction is Chief Obafemi Awolowo. Okay, Chief Obafemi Awolowo is the renowned leader of the Yoruba. In fact, some Yoruba people compare him to the ancient gods like Ogun and Shango. I remember when I was growing up, Chief Hubert Ogunde had a song, Orisha bí rẹ o, Awólọ́wọ̀ kò sí nílẹ̀ Yorùbá, àwa ti mọ̀. Like there's a whole almost spiritual song dedicated to Chief Obafemi Awolowo. And the size of that man among Yorubas is just so huge. Not just for the things he did, but for the honesty, for the integrity. The people saw and knew that this is our leader. This is who we are built after. What we have right now, in terms of Yoruba leadership, the president, especially the Yoruba leader, for the most part, it doesn't look good for us. For an ethnic nation that is reputed to be one of the most educated in Africa, the Yorubas are not in want of smart people, of highly qualified people, I think that is extremely shameful, Mr. Diolu, that the president has this much moral baggage, that his chief of staff has just been disbarred for fraud. in the United States. And this chief of staff used to be the number 4 man also. And you can just go down, 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 down. You can just see a whole lot of people and issues. People who, they're not above the fray, like they're not above the moral fray. It's concerning, honestly. I think the Yoruba people, as a group, we also need our own moment of cultural reflection and say what happened to our Omoluabi ethos. You know, my alma mater, my secondary school, Nation Grammar School, our actual motto is Ehua Omoluabi. That is what it was. It was crafted by Fela Anikulapo's father, because Fela's father, Reverend Rasom Kuti, was one who started the school in 1934. And that man started a lot of schools. And you can tell by his children just how morally upstanding that man was. That is who the Yorubas are. What we are seeing today is a departure from who we are originally, where a lot of our leaders have all of these moral questions. So I truly believe that starting with our traditional institutions, clergy of Yoruba extraction, and all the different mountains and structures of society, we will need to go back and have a conversation amongst ourselves to say, why is this happening to us? How do we change these around? How do we go back to those glory days? Chief Obafemi Awolowo, I always proudly say it, that the British Prime Minister said about him that Chief Awolowo is so sagacious, he has the capacity to rule the United Kingdom and the US at the same time. That's our original leader. That's who we know. There was no certificate of forgery. In fact, the letter that he wrote to borrow money to be able to go to school in the UK, to borrow money from somebody, that letter is out in the public. He was so sound, even as somebody who was just trying to go acquire his law degree in the UK at the time. For me, that is who I connect with as a leader. That is who I remember as a leader. That is who I would like to emulate. And if I'm going to tell my children about Yoruba leadership, that is who I'll be pointing to. What we have today, unfortunately, is not good. But it's not limited to the Yoruba alone. Like we went through the names, cuts across from the west to the east to the north of Nigeria. Unscrupulous elements abound across all cultures. Honest people abound across all cultures. All of us must go back in the wake of what is going on right now, that this case we're discussing, and really take a moment to say, let us reevaluate and see how we can craft a better nation, not just in terms of prosperity, but in terms of moral rectitude. I think it's very, very, very important.
Thank you so much. Adejuwan Jory, J1, fantastic. You always live up to the billing, you know. I mean, you said things that really touched me. I went to Abeokuta Grammar School, and Fela's father was, I think, the number 1 student of Abeokuta Grammar School, established in 1908, and he became the 3rd principal. And I'm sure you know that Elisha Grammar School and Abeokuta Grammar School are union schools.
Correct.
You know, yeah, Anglican are union schools. So, and I always tell people that in my entire life, the greatest education I got, the things that touched my life the most, attitude, composure, integrity, and what have you, was from Abeokuta Grammar School. You understand? If you ask me now, I can easily tell you my admission number was 10,080. I know who was 10,079. Dr. Odobola Badaru is in Australia. He's half Russian, half Nigerian. His father is a medical doctor. You know, I can't remember who is 10,081. You know, that kind of thing. We have a rule of honors book. So going to Government College Ibadan Grammar School, Elisha Grammar School, it's not a very difficult thing to prove, you know. So J1, thank you so much. I mean, to our listener, J1 is a social commentator and a public affairs analyst. We'll bring him back when this judgment is given. I'm sure we should bring him back. I'm sure you all agree. Most of our listeners, and the viewers like you so much. So this is still Atlanta Discourse. My name remains Ade Balogun. You know, right here we embrace all facets of humanity to disseminate positive news in a world filled with a lot of very bad news. We give a voice to the unheard. We balance the information equation. We search and discuss the facts wherever it is, which is exactly what we're doing. You know, we combine the best of the human race to get the best out of mankind. We serve as a bridge between the developed and the developed world. We embrace IT, politics, faith-based issue, business, anything that is relevant. we just go for the facts, and that's what we do here. So, Adejuwa and Johnny, thank you for coming to Atlanta Discuss. We're going to bring you back shortly, don't worry, because this is a very strategic time for Africa's most populous nation, the black man's most populous nation. This is not a time to sit on the fence. I mean, people will lose friends, things will happen, but we just have to say it the way it is. Nigeria is already battered almost beyond repairs economically. Nothing is looking good, and I repeat, nothing is looking good. You give an example of how the American institution fought Trump in Africa. That will have been a walk in the park. So we're not going to sit on the fence. We're just going to say the truth the way it is. Nobody is against anybody. Nobody has nothing to do with affiliation. At Atlanta Discuss, we just go for the facts. So Adejuwa and Jordan, thanks for coming. Hopefully during the week, we're going to give you another very fantastic issue to discuss about. I think we're going to give you a part 2 of what all the diaspora contingent can engage the Nigerian government positively. So there's going to be a part 2. I promise you I was going to bring another guest that will speak after Dr. Kenneth Bandy, and that's what we're going to do. So once again, thank you, our viewers. Thank you for your time. Thank you for attention. J1, thank you again for creating time from your very busy schedule. I know you're very, very busy. Thank you. All right.
Thank you
Take
very
care.
much.
Bye.
Yeah,
You're
bye-bye.
most welcome. Thank you. Bye.